my name is Christian. This is Professor Day's Biology 1406 May Messer Genetics video. In our video today, you're going to be learning about hemophilia, and specifically what about hemophilia, what causes it, the interesting case studies, and also how to treat it. Today you'll be hearing from the following classmates.
Okay, so first we're going to start off with genetic principles. So our first topic is what is hemophilia? Hemophilia is a bleeding disorder that slows the blood clotting process. So this happens because you don't have the clotting protein in your blood that helps your blood to clot whenever you get like a cut or something, so you don't bleed out. So with hemophilia, even if you have just a simple paper cut, technically you could bleed to death because you don't have that blood clotting protein. So, causes of hemophilia, it's a sex-linked gene, so it is attached to the X chromosome. So as you can see on the screen, we have a picture of the causes of hemophilia. So you can see according to the different people, the father and the mother, and the different genes that has the hemophilia trait in the carrier of it, you can see how that affects the children and all of that. So, how it is inherited. Hemophilia A and B are inherited on the X-linked in a X-linked recessive pattern. So this would mean that they're recessive, so if you had say a daughter with hemophilia, you would have to have the recessive trait on both of the X chromosomes for it to show up as the actual disease. And if you were to have a son with hemophilia, you would have to have it on their one X chromosome, so it would show up.
Today I'm going to talk about 3 types of hemophilia that people are being diagnosed. The first type of hemophilia I'm going to talk about is hemophilia A. Hemophilia A is the most common type of hemophilia. About 8 out of 10 people with hemophilia have hemophilia A. People with hemophilia A do not have enough clotting factor A. The next type of hemophilia I'm going to be talking about is hemophilia B. Hemophilia B is also known as Christmas disease and a less common type of hemophilia than hemophilia A. People with hemophilia B do not have enough clotting factor 9. It is caused by a deficiency in clotting factor 9. The third type of hemophilia I'm going to talk about is hemophilia C. Hemophilia C is also called deficiency of factor 11. Hemophilia C is a mild form of hemophilia. It is inherited differently than hemophilia A or B, and as a result, it could be passed to both male and female children. The next slide I'm going to talk about is the list of symptoms about hemophilia disorder. So I'm here to explain how the symptoms contribute to hemophilia disorder with people being diagnosed. When people have hemophilia, they experience excessive bleeding and cuts, injuries, or after surgeries. Excessive bleeding is like almost anywhere of your entire body. They will they'll be having many deep, large bruises showing for the cause of hemophilia. Next, they will be having unusual bleeding after vaccinations. Then you will start having blood in urine or stool due to hemophilia. And then sometimes people have nosebleeds with unknown cause of the disorder. And lastly but not least, in severe hemophilia, a simple bump to the head can cause severe and continuous bleeding. It can also cause people to become unconscious.
Now we're going to talk about a case study that we found of the disease. So we chose an African American male, a newborn actually. He was diagnosed with the disease at 2 days old, and the way he was actually diagnosed with it was actually kind of interesting. They actually did a procedure on him. They did a circumcision procedure, which is normal for every newborn here in the States. And usually it does cause some bleeding, but not a lot. That stopped shortly. But in the infant's case, his name wasn't released, by the way, because he was a minor. The infant's case, the bleeding did not stop. It was extreme bleeding, and it was consistent as well. According to the case study, which will be linked in the presentation, the nurses and the nursing staff had to change the bandages for the patient on average every 2 hours, which is very unnatural and very uncommon for a procedure such as a circumcision. The African American male was born via vaginal delivery. He was a full-term baby at 40 weeks. According to the doctors, the pregnancy was unremarkable with no issues during pregnancy, so the disease was unforeseen and they weren't able to diagnose it until after the fact. Upon further questioning, the nursing staff found that the grandfather on the mother's side was a carrier for the disease. The mother was unaware of this fact, which played a big role in diagnosing the patient.
Thanks, Eddie, for that amazing case study. So now we're moving on to the background of the disorder. Specifically, we're going to talk about the etiology and the pathogenesis. So changes in the F8 gene are responsible for hemophilia A, while mutations in the F9 gene are responsible for hemophilia B. Mutations in both F8 or F9 gene can lead to the production of abnormal versions of a coagulate factor. And reduces the amounts of these proteins. The altered or missing proteins cause an insufficient generation of thrombin, which is an enzyme in the blood plasma who is responsible for the actual clotting of the blood. Ultimately, it is unable to participate effectively in the blood clotting process. Thrombin is produced by the F9A and the F8A complex by means of intrinsic pathways of the coagulate cascade along the tissue factor pathway inhibitor. But in the case of hemophilia, the coagulate cascade actually shuts down in a sense. And like we stated before, hemophilia A is inherited in an X-linked recessive pattern, and approximately 30% of the cases showed that there is no family history of this disorder. Of genetic cases, approximately 1/3 are a result of de novo mutations not present in the mother's X chromosomes. The genes for F8 are located in the long arm of the X chromosome in the band Q28. The F8 gene is one of the largest genes, taking up approximately 0.1% of the DNA in the X chromosome. The protein contains 2,332 amino acids and has a molecular weight of 300 kD. It includes 3 A domains, 1 B domain, and 2 C domains. Several other mutation types have been described to result in the deficiency of factor VIII. So now you're able to see on your right-hand side, we have a picture that shows the actual clotting process and how a normal person without the disorder would function and actually make the cascade and clot the damaged blood cells. Okay, so now we're moving on to our evolutionary tree. So we use the MAX software to find the gene F8. So first you could see that we, at the very top, we start off with the golden snubbed monkey, and that's closely related to the Scooty Mangabe monkey. These are primates, and since they are primates, we're pretty much related to them as well, since we are like the third one down. We have humans, and then after humans, we see that there was a breakage, and it turned into the primate common marmoset. These are tiny little monkeys, and you could see that they also carry this gene for hemophilia. after the common marmoset, we have a donkey. So it shows a donkey was, I believe it was 83% matched to our genes, so pretty much it matched 83% to humans. And then lastly, we have an Eastern rabbit. This species breaks off at the very beginning of the tree, so you could see that we're not as related, but there is still an 80% similarity to humans. And that's some animals that contain the same gene for F8 that is known to cause hemophilia.
So now we're going to look into topic number 5, which is the phenotype and natural history of a individual with hemophilia. So the individual we're going to be looking at is Alex Dossett, and you might know him. He's a famous cyclist. So it took them 18 months from when Alex was born to finally diagnose him with hemophilia A, which is the most common type of hemophilia. He had symptoms when he was a child before they diagnosed him of major bruising. So anytime his mom would go and pick him up as a baby, they said 10 minutes later he would have handprint bruise marks on his body because of how sensitive his body was, because he didn't have the clotting proteins to heal that inside of his body. If finally, at 18 months, he was blood tested and they diagnosed him with hemophilia A, and in that way they also were able to find out that his mother was actually a carrier of the trait, which is how he was born with hemophilia. So some characteristics that Alex had was the extreme bruising, which I just spoke about. If he had a head injury, it would cause slow bleeding but continuous bleeding in the brain, so that if it was left untreated for like a week or so, he could die from that. He was able to actually lessen his joint pain, because with hemophilia there's certain joints like your elbows and your knees and all that are more common to bleeding when you have like excessive exercise and stuff. And when you have hemophilia, you don't have the clotting that can heal those. So you have excess bleeding there, so it is very painful in those joint areas. But he was actually able to lessen that joint pain by his buildup of muscles from him being a cyclist. So the muscles in those areas were able to protect his joints better from the excessive bleeding and that pain. He was also a good example to help prove that sports can be a good way to manage the condition of hemophilia by the buildup of muscle and everything that I just spoke about to help.
So our next bullet point we're going to be talking about is management. So within this we're going to be talking about treatments for hemophilia and also some side effects or dangers with some of the treatments. So the first treatment is replacement therapy, and this is replacement with some blood that has the clotting factors that you need in it. So they have ways to do this like in a clinic or in a hospital through blood donation, or you can even do it, they have some ways from home. So the next treatment is desmopressin, or DDAVP for short, and this is in mild hemophilia. So this is a hormone that releases more of the clotting factor that you need for your blood to clot and to bring down the effects of hemophilia. The next one is not to take clot preventing medications. So if you already have hemophilia, obviously clot preventing medications is not a good idea, because that's going to thin out your blood even more, and it'll already make your disease and the side effects from that disease worse. So the next one is fibrin sealants, and these can be directly applied to the sites, like if you have just some small wounds on your body, you can apply those directly to the site, and that helps promote blood clotting and sealing of that wound. There's also physical therapy. So this would be for like joint pains that would come along with the symptoms of hemophilia. So you can go to physical therapy to help work through and kind of calm down all of those inflammations and symptoms and all of that. There is also just simple first aid for minor cuts you can do. So like we said earlier, you can technically with hemophilia bleed out from a simple paper cut. So just by doing simple first aid steps to some of those minor cuts like that, like applying direct pressure for a longer amount of time than you normally would, and sealing up the wound will help to stop that and help seal the wound better. So there are certain complications that can occur with the treatments that I just went over, such as with replacement therapy. If you take it in too fast of intervals for your severity or your certain type of hemophilia, then that can give you too much of a clotting factor, so that messes with the amount of liquid that your blood is, so it's not going to be the right texture, so it can't flow as well through your body and all that. Also, like obviously complications with the clot preventing medication, if you take that, then your hemophilia will only continue to get worse because that stops clotting even more. So there's some different complications that can occur with all those. Also physical therapy, if you do too much of that, you can cause even greater issues or joint pain with your hemophilia, so you have to make sure you're doing the right amount for your body and the severity of the disease in you. So a few other treatments is just lifestyle and home remedies like exercising more regularly, and again avoiding blood thinning medication. So you don't want to avoid that because that can just increase the severity of your hemophilia, because that obviously just creates even less of blood clotting, and it's easier for the blood to flow out of your body when you do have an injury or after surgery or anything like that. Exercising regularly, when we went over with like the Alex case study, he exercised so the buildup of muscle would help him in his symptoms, like his joint pain and all that. So that can just help reduce the symptoms with hemophilia. But there are certain sports you can do, like swimming and cycling and walking can build up the muscle that you need and help with those symptoms. But there's also things like contact sports such as football or wrestling or hockey or any of that stuff can just cause more damage to your body with like bruises and bleeding and all those different kinds of diseases.
So the genes associated with this disease are actually located on the X chromosome, which is one of the two sex chromosomes. So guys have XX and then girls have XY. So one altered gene in males will actually is sufficient enough to give them this condition. So it's about 1 in 4,000 males that are actually born with hemophilia A, and then for hemophilia B, it's 1 in 20,000.